So fairies, there's quite a lot of them nowadays, with it being speculated there's 1 or 2 in every 5,000 people, and that's only estimated to increase. And they're especially active on the internet, mainly in communities like War Thunder. No, this isn't slander, the facts speak for themselves, and I am more than happy to take another sponsorship from the Omnisire Snail. Also, if you play anything but Germany, you're a pussy bitch. It's also said they are very active on a game that is essentially the hellhole of the internet and has a reputation that is the equivalent of a filled septic tank, VR chat.
Oh, I guess I'm weird for wearing a fursona. I guess it's also weird that I have a fucking litter box right beside me, is it?
Yes, 100%.
Shut the fuck up.
But we have talked a lot about furries on this channel, almost as much as VTubers at this point, but that's probably because there are so many furries that this community of anthropomorphic individuals have basically seen and experienced it all. I'm talking chlorine attacks, murder, predators, zoophiles, the dreaded pizza incident of October 2021. Do not Google that if you're eating, you will lose your appetite, especially if you're eating pizza. But just all around, there's been quite a lot of terrible events and individuals that have been involved in or surrounded this community, and it's directly led to the reputation of furries over the years being tainted as a result. And it's to the point where the stereotype of furries nowadays is often that most are assumed to be just as worse as those involved in said notorious events that have occurred within the community, when in reality a lot of furries disown or disavow these types of activities and do not welcome these people within their community, and they are often on the same side as people outside the community when it comes to criticizing the more infamous members. The only thing the average furry is guilty of is being way too educated on guns and computers to an insufferable level. Like for the last time, I do not give a what flavour of Linux you're using, I still prefer Kali, and come back to me when a Linux distribution can run at least one piece of Adobe software. And yes, I know there are Linux alternatives to Adobe products, I already know you love using GIMP. Also, most furries aren't actually as vocal or loud about their hobby as you think.
I've been a furry in secret for years and I want to know what my fursona is.
And you wouldn't usually know when someone is a furry, they're quite secretive about it, and chances are you may know somebody who is a furry without actually knowing it. No, for the last time, I'm not referring to myself, I am not a furry or furry adjacent, no matter how many times people claim I am. I would much rather most of you call me a slur than continue to lie on my name. But people expecting the worst from furries leads on to the topic of today's video, as you may have seen a certain clip that went viral where a furry was accused of doing something absolutely heinous, and in response to said allegations, for whatever reason, he decided to break out in song and made a public video singing Billie Eilish's Lovely straight after the allegations dropped, when they had most of the internet condemning them for said allegations.
Tear me to pieces.
Now, I obviously can't play the rest due to copyright, but I can tell you it keeps going. And you know, if they weren't being accused of something so terrible, I'd probably say their singing was actually pretty good in the full version. Anyway, this is the furry JT Wusky, a 26-year-old creator that, if you couldn't deduce from the caption of the video, was supposedly accused of and other very disgusting things, but there's actually a lot more to the story than what that one viral video led a lot of people to believe. And it's something I wanted to talk about today, but before we get into the allegations, we need to quickly go over who JT Wusky is. JT Wusky, or JT as he's usually known, is a furry content creator that started making content around August of 2020, which was when they started streaming on Twitch, streaming games like VR chat. Yeah, remember when I mentioned how much furries love VR chat? I was not lying. But apart from VR chat, his usual content involved things like streaming other VR games, occasional IRL content, and regularly singing for their audience with covers of songs being uploaded to their now inactive YouTube channel.
Yeah, they were all yellow.
JT was known for his streams being both high energy and him regularly demonstrating his singing skills that many of his viewers enjoyed, which, as we know, said singing would later make him more well known outside of his community, just not for the right reason. His streams were also known to be occasionally questionable at times, at least by my standards.
Yeah.
You're a good boy.
Oh my god. Oh my.
They're not even doing the meta right. You're supposed to be doing that type of shit in the just chatting section with the hot tubs and half naked people. Anyway, JT would be somewhat well known within the fairy community as the years went on. They reached over 30,000 followers on Twitch, over 100,000 on Twitter, and they regularly attended fairy events where they were often recognised by the community. They eventually adopted a fairy VTuber for their content around the time VTubers were popping off, and from the outside it definitely looked like GT and his platform would continue to grow. But around February of 2024, allegations would be made against JT that would seemingly stunt their growth. They actually wouldn't see any growth at all going past this event, at least on things like Twitch, probably because both their name and brand became synonymous with the terrible allegations levied against them. That is a basic description of who JT Wusky is, but what are these damning allegations?
The darkness of the afterlife is all that awaits you now. May you find more peace in that world than you found in this one.
Now, in this section we do talk about some disturbing things, so viewer discretion is advised. I honestly wish I could unsee the things I have seen. So the allegations made against JT were all sourced from a public post JT didn't even make. It was actually made by another fairy that draws NSFW content, who for this video I'll call Sheppy. Now Sheppy and JT were somewhat acquainted in 2022 to the point where Sheppy apparently visited JT, and from what I can see from the context given, when they met they did not very wholesome fairy things involving feet. I'm honestly thinking about swallowing 12 gauge with the amount of things I've been exposed to looking into this. Sheppy would then make a public post with an art piece to commemorate the meeting, and you can probably guess what the art piece was. It was basically fairy porn. And this is the post that started it all. But it wouldn't be immediate, it would take about 2 more years till it would start causing problems. And within those 2 years, around 2023, Sheppy would apparently transition from drawing what they usually draw to drawing things like cover, and would sign up for an adult fairy website to post such things. Now if you don't know what cover is, you're lucky and blessed, and I'm about to ruin said blessing. Cub basically refers to smaller, younger versions of fairies, but in this context, Sheppy had transitioned to apparently NSFW versions of said characters, which to say the least is very weird and something that within the fairy community is looked down upon. And in 2023, Sheppy had started producing said artwork and was called out for it multiple times, especially on places like Twitter where people would tell him how disgusting his art was and that he was trying to hide it now or rebrand. Which led them to later respond by basically saying they aren't hiding that they draw this content, they won't argue about the morality about the production of said art, and then for some reason they add that they've never been inappropriate with anyone underage, and that their excuse for drawing this content was that they had something happen to them when they were younger and it's a coping mechanism. And they were also called out for writing a story, I guess, where a father does things to his young fairy son. Yeah, this is getting very disgusting and deplorable very fast, I know, but it is relevant to the story. I swear your chromosomes actively evaporating from me telling you these things were not sacrificed in vain. Now some would take note of Sheppy's transition to this type of content and like others begin calling them out for it, with the most notable being the account Fairy Following, an account supposedly run by multiple people and dedicated to following all fairies. And sometimes they would also comment on situations and drama happening within the fairy community as well. Also, just to add a random trivia gem here, they previously played a part in calling out a fairy way before they were later known for being put on the front page of Twitch wearing a diaper and using a pacifier, which stunlocked a lot of people when they loaded up Twitch and was greeted with said fairy with a diaper and a pacifier on the home page, which was a huge controversy over 6 months ago.
They adore you!
Anything for you?
Locked in. Has Kevin said anything?
Kevin is so locked in, he hasn't spoken a word in 50 minutes. I'm not gonna judge. Okay, I'm gonna judge. Actually, I think
Just a bit of lore for you there. But anyway, it wasn't out of the ordinary for the fairy following page to call out people within the fairy community, especially those that were associated with or made cub content. And in this situation, fairy following had started to focus on Sheppy and that art he made involving JT from 2 years ago, as they would add to a comment somebody else made about the post referring to the art as more cub content that Sheppy had produced. And by association, they condemned JT Wusky because not only was he in said art and they claimed he commissioned it, but he had also met the person who made it IRL. And this is what started the claim that JT was endorsing cub content and potentially had an interest in it. Some would come to the defense of JT, but then the fairy following account would then basically shoot out more allegations claiming that these people were just as bad and alleging that 2 of them had children. And when one of them asked for proof that they did such things, they didn't provide any at all and just blocked them. But JT would start getting hate online around this time, primarily because of the allegations made against him, which resulted in him making the dreaded response video many know him for.
Tear me to pieces, skin and bone.
And going forward, JT would be infamously known as a disgusting degenerate fairy, and they would never really come back from it. But obviously, that's not the full story, that's just the information a lot of people were fed, and through the circulation of that one video, people still continue to believe that narrative regarding JT, when in reality, most of the allegations made against JT made no sense at all. So starting with the one thing that kicked all of this off, which was the public post made by Sheppy, and attached to the post was an art piece supposedly showing the cub versions of his and JT's personas doing things based on what apparently happened when they met. This was originally posted in 2022 before Sheppy was known as a person who drew cub and before they made the transition to more cub content, which was in 2023. And as JT later said on his alt account when people were accusing him of being in support of this type of content, saying this wasn't a commissioned piece and there was no indication this was cub, this was just a gift made by Sheppy. They also would go on to clarify on their main account they are not in support of this type of content and would not have allowed them to make it and post said piece if they knew it was NSFW cub content. They also supposedly didn't even know that Sheppy was drawing these types of things and actually hadn't been in contact with them for some time, which was before they were known for drawing cub art. With the last message JT actually responded to being in March of 2023, but a lot of the time Sheppy reached out to JT, they were either overlooked or ignored, including one where Sheppy reached out regarding this situation, even saying themselves that the two don't really talk. And yes, from the outside, it still looks bad that they had previous contact with someone that makes said images, but it wasn't proven that JT knew they made said content or supported it. But 2 years after the post that started all of this was made, only then were these allegations made against JT, and then signal boosted by the fairy following account, which then made more allegations against other people without providing further evidence. If these allegations are starting to look less reliable, you're not wrong, and as it turns out, all of this happening wasn't just a coincidence. Now, as I previously said, the fairy following account is ran by multiple people, and apparently one of the members of the page had something against JT, a member going by the name Chronic. They were the one that retweeted and signal boosted the initial tweet that kicked everything off. They were also the one that made said initial tweet. And when the account started getting pushback, especially for the allegations they were throwing out, they would make a statement saying said member has been removed, and they would retract the claim they made about one of the people defending JT saying they were a groomer, clarifying they might have only said that because that creator suddenly switched to more adult themed content, but once again that member that made that claim had been removed. However, the person being accused of being a groomer would still push for proof that they had in fact removed said member from the team, which would result in another member responding saying there is no proof of their removal as everything was done over a call, they take responsibility, and then goes on to say they don't like both JT and them. And they would go on to make multiple other tweets saying they are sorry for what that member did, but at the same time explaining why they don't like this person. And at this point, if you couldn't tell, it comes off like they weren't really sorry about what happened at all. And that's probably because They weren't. They were the same person that made the accusations in the first place. In fact, there was no group of members running a single Twitter account. It was all one person with multiple alts known as Grim, which would become apparent when their ex-partner came out claiming such, alongside saying that Grim had always had a so-called hate boner for JT. The ex-partner would go on to talk about dating Grim, claiming Grim hated and talked about JT so much it made them jealous, alongside other things. Grim would attempt to discredit them, in one case posting on one of his alts where he apparently presented himself as a trans person, and he would share a picture saying he didn't look like Grim at all, but said image may have been altered by AI. He would then take to his Discord telling everyone he is done with Twitter and the Furry following account. He would once again claim that his ex is lying about the account and the other people on the account are from college and are not him, and he would finish off saying he's going to the hospital due to all the stress this has caused. And for whatever reason, after this, a lot of his accounts he claimed wasn't him and was his friends would be deleted, with an Excel spreadsheet being made showing all of his alts and the personalities he attempted to portray on them. JT would also comment on them deleting their accounts, saying after everything they did and all the damage they caused, they just ran away. A day later, Grim would make a video supposedly admitting to everything, like the alt accounts being in fact him, but aside from the transcripts provided, I couldn't find a re-upload of the video or any archive of it because Grim would quickly remove the video after. So just to summarise everything, an account that had the purpose of following and supporting every fairy, supposedly ran by multiple people but in reality was one person with over 6 alt accounts, and apparently they had a raging hate boner for a creator, made a post on his alt account alleging that this creator was into or endorsing weird cub content, and then signal boosted said allegation on their much bigger account, and when people started to push back they would spew more allegations, then would walk back those allegations, saying they removed the person making them whilst confirming why they hate the people involved. Then they get called out by an ex-partner for running multiple alt accounts. They claim the ex is lying, the stress is too much even though they started it all, and then would make a video admitting to it all. And in the aftermath, most people only got like a third of the lore and were mostly only interested in the video where JT supposedly apologises for doing the things alleged against him, which for context, wasn't even an apology. It was just a cover of a song he made which was normal for him to do, but admittedly was made at the worst possible time because people just assumed it was them showing guilt for what they supposedly did. And the caption applied to the videos that have been circulated, more specifically the ones where it says he grew somebody. I don't even know where they got that from, because from what I saw there was only one person being accused of grooming, and it wasn't JT, it was some other creator. But JT still to this day is believed to have done said heinous act, primarily because someone made a post due to a hate boner they had for him, and someone else took his cover video, scrubbed all the context from it, and applied a caption that is, from what I can see, factually incorrect. But said video went somewhat viral, and a lot of people wrongfully believe he did do these things, and still do every time the video occasionally circulates. And I'll be honest, I believed it as well when I came across the video whilst I was scrolling, and I only believed otherwise when I did more scrolling and came across another video from the person who made JT Wuski's model, going into why he's innocent, pointing to a document that compiled all the information. But to this day, many still believe JT did do these things and he did see a hit to his online presence because of it. I guess the moral of the story is don't believe everything you see online, especially at face value. JT does still occasionally stream, but since this event happened, at least in my opinion, it seems because of it, the momentum he had previously is no longer there. Make sure to check out Lago Vert's video on this situation. It did help with this video and it goes further into detail about what happened. But that's just something I wanted to talk about today. Once again, don't trust everything you see on the internet. No, a gilf in your area is not interested in you. Who would be? And yeah, that's all I had to say, and bye-bye.